Not sure if we're streaming right now. I think we're live. What's happening? How's things, Aaron?
Very well. Wow, what an intro.
I love it. I love the music. Thank you so much for joining me. To everybody watching here this evening, this epic gentleman is Aaron Timms, and Aaron is based in Colchester near London in the UK. I have been blessed to be introduced to this man through a mutual friend of ours, and he has an exceptional story. So I just want to say thank you again for jumping on here with me and sharing your heart with everybody. You're very welcome.
Oh, thank you. It's a privilege to be here. Thank you so much for having me. What a beautiful platform. I can feel the energy and I can feel the love already. So thank you.
It's a beautiful place. This is Todd Medina's baby, and it's his goal is just sharing the magic and connection. Just sharing the connection with people like yourself, myself, and that we can all, I suppose, we all have the common theme of, whatever adversity we go through as humans, that we come out the far side of it as stronger, wiser, braver, more courageous souls, and learn, I guess, to look back on the journeys and laugh or cry, whatever it might look like. I don't know. But Aaron is a mind-body healing coach, and I just wrote down something smaller, which is you help people suffering from emotional trauma and physical pain to heal permanently in life. And how you found your way on this path is the magical story that you shared with me. I'd love if you can to just to open up with telling people how you came about to be on this path.
Yeah, absolutely. I started life as a car mechanic, actually. I was 21 years old, and I was involved in a car crash that just changed my life forever. I remember it was like it was yesterday, to be honest. I had the day off work. My left ankle was already broken from a football injury, something completely different. And I had my leg in a cast. So I'd spent the whole day off work, just kind of sitting there enduring the rubbish daytime telly. And it was my best friend's 24th birthday. I was waiting for him to finish work and come and collect me, and we're going to go out for a meal. And eventually that's what happened. He turned up and I made my way out to the car. I was on my crutches, and there was myself. There was Ollie, my best friend of 8 years, and Donna, my girlfriend of 6 years. They were brother and sister. And I went to get in the car, and I couldn't get in because I couldn't kind of climb over into the back. So Ollie got into the back, I got in the front, and off we went, you know, and we went out for a meal, and it was wonderful, very stereotypically English, actually. Nice pub, and there was a cricket ground opposite, and, you know, and as we're sat there, there's a beautiful log fire and big logs, and it's warm and the energy's beautiful, lots of love, lots of laughter, and, you know, just how you'd expect it to be on a birthday, actually. And as we're leaving the restaurant, I'm kind of making my way out through the door, and I've got my crutches, kind of hobbling along, and Ollie shouts out to me. He says, "Aaron, I'll be back in a minute." So, all right, mate. So I guess he went to the toilet, and out I went, and I made my way out to the car with Donna, and she was driving. So she went round to the front, she got in, and I'm stood there by the car, and it's a little Audi A3 3-door. And I'm waiting, and it's kind of getting freezing cold, and it's starting to rain, and I'm stood there like, come on, Ollie, come on. And then in this moment, it was like, the only way I can describe it, it was like time just stood still. And it was like this energetic pull. It was almost like someone grabbing me by the shirt and pulling me in. And I didn't hear a voice, but it was like I could hear a voice and just saying, get in the car, Aaron, get in the car. So it's what I did. I opened the door, and I pushed the seat forward with my crutch and kind of jammed my crutch in there to make a bit more room. And I was sort of shuffling over to the back, and I remember pulling my leg in, the one with the cast, and thinking, why am I doing this? And eventually I kind of got in, and Ollie came out, we put our seatbelts on, and off we went. And that's when the crash happened. We're driving down this B road. It's like quite a wide, long stretch of road, and it's making a right-hand turn. And as we come up we're sort of approaching the corner, we come up behind this car, and it starts to sort of slow down and speed up and slow down, and starting to act really odd. So Donna just decides to make the overtake. And as we start to overtake, the car speeds up, and we speed up, and the car speeds up, and we speed up. And by this time, we're doing about 70 miles an hour, which is probably, I guess, about 80, 90 kilometers an hour, something like that. And we finally kind of make our way past the car. And as we come back in, the car begins to lose control. And that's when we started to move from side to side. And all I can see out the windscreen is just like trees, road, trees, road, trees, road. And hear the sound of the tires screeching. All of a sudden, we just hit the curb, flipped upside down. It was like, bang. We landed on the roof. And at this point, I had never been amongst death before. I'd never experienced that. But I could feel this kind of cold, dead, still energy. I mean, I was howling and screaming. I was in agony. I mean, it felt like my back, it felt like someone had got a big kitchen knife and kind of pushed it into the base of my spine and twisted it. I mean, I was in agony, but beyond my own screaming and howling, I could just feel and hear this kind of dead silence. And then what felt like probably 4 days, but I now know it was about 40 minutes or so. I can see faces appear and blue lights flashing, and the sound of metal tearing and sparks flying everywhere, and the fire brigade cut me out. And that's when I was pulled out of the car. And to be honest, I don't remember the journey back to A&E. I must have passed out or something, but I do remember arriving at A&E. And it was like, the only way I can describe it was like I could see myself as a third person. It's really weird. I remember seeing myself on the stretcher, and I could see myself being wheeled into A&E. This big emergency happening, the doctors flying everywhere, and, this big kind of rush. And I was wheeled off and had CT scan and MRI scan and whatever else. And then I just remember I'm laying in the intensive care room, and it's complete silence. It's just me and my dad. And my mum walks in, and I can see by the look on her face, everything's not okay. And that's when she delivered the news to me. She kind of came over to the bed and leant over and gave me a cuddle, and I'm sort of strapped down, with the big orange neck brace and the orange seatbelt looking thing strapped me down to the bed. And she leant over and she said, "Aaron, I'm sorry, they're dead." And that's when, you know, I was screaming and my mum was crying, and then she said, "And you've broken your back." And I didn't, to be honest, I was 21. I had no idea what that meant. I didn't care. I was in so much pain. I felt like someone had kind of torn my heart out and just replaced it with this cold stone, to be honest. And all I knew is that my legs didn't move. They didn't work, and my back was in agony. And then I spent the next 5 or 6 hours there at A&E in Colchester. And then the next morning, I think it was about 5 or 6 a.m. in the morning, I was then transferred over to a hospital near London by air ambulance. So they took me in the helicopter over to Romford because there's a specialist neurological unit there. And I spent the next 3 weeks in intensive care. And what had happened, I later found out, is basically I'd broken my back. My T12 and L1 vertebra had been pulled apart, and kind of one had slid behind the other. So my spinal cord was trapped in like an S shape. And the reason I spent sort of 3 weeks there before I had the operation to realign my spine is because basically my spinal cord was pinched, and any further damage, and it could have been serious, really serious, potentially fatal. So I had the operation, and my dad was the only person there to receive the news once the operation was complete. And the spinal surgeon, he called my dad into the office. He said, "Mr. Timms, come and sit down." And he said, "We got good news and we got bad news." He said, "The good news is that even though the operation took, nearly 9 hours, we managed to realign his spine and put it back together without any further damage to the spinal cord. The bad news is the damage to his cord was worse than we originally thought, and he's never going to walk again." And I mean, I don't know how many of you that are watching are parents. I'm a parent now. I've got a daughter of 2 years old, and I'm starting to kind of get an idea of what that must have been like for him. And he went home and he made a decision. He actually started speaking. He spoke to my stepmom about it, and my dad and my stepmom, they married when I was 6. So, I've known her a lot of years, and she's always been into spirituality, into mind-body healing, into alternative therapies. And she had a conversation with my dad and basically said, "Look, if Aaron knows the true prognosis, he has no hope, he has no belief. And without that, it's game over." So my dad made a decision to come back to the hospital, and that I wouldn't know the news. I wasn't to know the truth. And he basically stood and he told the consultants and the spinal surgeon, "Aaron can't know the truth. We've got to give him hope." And they said, basically, he's 21, it's legal protocol. He has to know the truth. And my dad stood in the doorway, literally. He had his arms against the doors in the intensive care room. And he said, "You are not coming in. You are not taking hope and belief away from my son." And I'm getting emotional now because I know if he didn't do that, I probably would still be in the chair. And after a heated discussion, as you can imagine, they agreed that I did have to know the truth, if you like, the true prognosis. But my dad could tell me in his time because of this, how serious the circumstances were. He never did. He lied to me. He told me that they thought I was going to walk again. He told me everything was going to be okay. He said that I'm going to be transferred to Stoke Mandeville, this special place where miracles happen. And he told the surgeons that I knew the truth, but I was too distraught and I wasn't to know. And as you can probably tell, I'm emotional because I really believe that that's probably the reason I'm walking. Seems crazy. It seems a bit naive in a way now to think, but at the time, I just believed that I was going to walk. And then 3 weeks after that moment, I was then transferred over to Stoke Mandeville. And Stoke Mandeville, for those of you that don't know, it's a specialist spinal injury centre for rehabilitation. And in my mind, I was actually going there because the miracle doctors, and they were going to help me heal. And I was going to walk out, and it's going to be this, you know, big success story. And I really was deluded. I really thought that's what it was all about. And the day I was transferred, after getting lost in a field, because the ambulance actually took a wrong turn, but when I finally arrived, they took me out. They wheeled me out into like this side room where they do some tests. And as I'm laying there, and I was really scared at this point because I felt the energy. It wasn't a good energy. It was quite suppressed. It was quite negative, and you know, I could see the other people in the wheelchairs, and it just didn't look good. And I'm really nervous at this point, and I'm quite scared, to be honest. And in walks Mr. Newton, and he was exactly what I imagined. You know, he's this tall, like smiley, bubbly consultant, and he had this great energy. And I later found out that he was a priest until he was 40. And he decided that he wasn't helping enough people, so he decided to become a spinal surgeon. I mean, what an incredible human being. So no wonder he had an amazing energy. And Mr. Newton, he did these tests, and one of them, he had like a pin. And he was literally pricking me down my side to see where I could feel. And you know, it was really sore down my ribs. And then when it got down to my legs, obviously I couldn't feel anything. And in that moment, when he was there, I felt safe. I felt like, oh, you know, everything's going to be okay. And as he walked out the room, I mean, the door was open, but it was like he hit this invisible brick wall. He just stopped in his tracks. He turned around and he kind of looked at me. And I was like, he's going to tell me it's all going to be okay. And he said, Aaron, it's all going to be okay. He said, you're going to make a great paraplegic. You've got strong shoulders, strong arms. And that was the moment. It was like, boom. This steam chain in my chest, and that was the moment I realized that actually this is real, you know. I don't think I'm ever going to walk again. And that was really where my journey started, to be honest, because my stepmom kind of introduced me to the concept that the mind can heal the body, and I thought she was crazy. I really did. To me, this whole concept was so taboo, so strange, so far out from where I was. But, you know, what did I have to lose? And that's where it started. I just started to meditate. I started to visualize all these things I'd never done before. And it was, well, actually, I did this thing where I would wheel myself down to the physio gym every day. I would kind of take myself down in my wheelchair, and they had these exercise bikes. And on these bikes, it was like, kind of it's like a sort of a seat with a 45-degree angle, and the electric motor. So, you know, so what you would do is you would transfer across and then strap your waist in, strap your knees on, strap your ankles on. It was designed for paraplegics. It's designed for circulation, basically. And I'd strap myself in, and I would close my eyes, and I would visualize being on the Tour de France. And I would imagine like cycling, and I would imagine, you know, I had 150 cyclists behind me chasing me, because if I was going to be on it, I was going to win it, right? So I would see the mountains down in the south of France, and I would feel the wind rushing past my face, and I would feel the burn in my legs, you know. And because it was such a fresh injury, I was able to remember what it felt like to have like that burning sensation in your legs, and I would just like really embody it. And the truth is, you know, when I started to do that, I had the intention, I want to heal. You know, my thinking was, if I can send electrical signals from my brain down into my legs, possibly I could get them working again. And the truth is, you know, three weeks later, nothing was really happening. And I was, at this point, I was all out on belief. I was like, I just can't see this happening. But I had this like massive realization that when I closed my eyes, I could experience anything I wanted to. And I was depressed. I was grieving. I was living in hospital, that's not a nice thing to do in itself. The energy was horrible because everyone in there, you know, they're going through a difficult time. But every time I closed my eyes, I could just go to this place and have a moment of fun, to be honest. It's like a little escape from reality. So I continued to do it. And then one day my mum came to visit, and you know, I just told her, you know, Mum, I've been doing this visualization going to the Tour de France. And she kind of looked at me, you know, did you bump your head? And I said, no, come and check it out. And we wheeled down to the gym, and, you know, I went on the bike, transferred across onto the bike, strapped myself in, and off I went. And because I'd been doing this every day, I just got really good at it. And I just slipped into this new reality. I was back on the Tour de France. I could feel the pressure of the bikes chasing me. I could see myself going down into Paris and up and down the Champs-Élysées. And, you know, I just felt it. Then all of a sudden, there's like, ah! And I was like, kind of snapped back out of it. And I looked around, and I'm back in the gym, and I look up, and my mum's crying and shaking and pointing. And there's this digital reader on the front of the bike, and it reads the resistance in your legs. And it'd been at 0% for the 3 weeks, and all of a sudden it read 300%. And I looked down, and my legs were moving. I could see my muscles kind of contracting, and that was I just burst out crying, as you can imagine. And that was the moment I knew. And then, you know, it was like, get Mr. Newton, come and see this. And from that moment, that was it. It was like, right, this I don't know how this works, but it works. And 12 weeks later, I walked out of hospital. And that's where it all started. Yeah.
12 weeks later.
Yeah.
So you went from being told at 21 that you're never going to walk again to 12 weeks later walking out. I didn't actually realize it was that soon.
Yeah. 12
and
weeks.
For something as profound and physical, for that to happen, you already were registering, by listening to you, already registering the importance of the mind-body connection. Would you have ever thought that was even something that was possible before this experience?
No way. You know, growing up, my stepmom used to say things like this to me a lot. You know, the mind can heal the body, and she used to talk about it. And I remember sitting there just thinking, you are crazy. Like, how could a thought, how could the mind, you know, how could an image or a visualization possibly influence the body? There's just no way. To be honest, it was literally desperation. I'd look in the wheelchair in the corner of the room, and I would think about life in a wheelchair, and, you know, all the, you know, would anyone love me again? And all these thoughts that happen, you know, it's not truth, of course, but they're all the things that go through your mind in that.
Absolutely.
And that was just horrible. And so it's just like, I was willing to do anything. And so I just started to do it. And no is the answer. I would never think anything like that is possible. You know, and of course, since that, I've read a lot of books and I've studied it. And now I'm starting to understand the link. It's a bit more obvious to me now. But at the time, no way. No way.
And in a state of such grief, the depths of your grief, you're grieving the loss of your girlfriend, your best friend, the loss of your life at 21, the loss of you know, I actually said this in a conversation with somebody today. It's like nearly the loss of what you have planned. Grief comes in many shapes and forms and can immobilize you. And by the sounds of listening to your story there now, it almost acted like a catalyst for your how do I even say it? Like for your expansion, to be able to remove yourself from the depths of your grief, to put your physical body into the position where you leave it. You leave it quite literally, and activate the power of your mind to signal to your body, you know, this is a life force, an undeniable life force that is underestimated and never really even used to this capacity. And I know that you've taken that, and quite literally now, run with it. Like it's incredible, because you know now the importance of the mind-body coherence. We had the common love of Dr. Joe Dispenza the last time we spoke, and shared what he does very publicly, very similar to what you're doing, is communicate the importance of the impact of a person's mind on their physical body. And stress it. I don't think people realize the chaos that their mind can take them to. In your case, obviously, it's an extreme situation. It's a massive, you know, a shake up, take down, where your entire existence pivots. And, you know, it's incredible listening to you, because you've done an exceptional job. I mean, and now you're passionate. You've taken, quite literally, was your trauma, turned it into a treasure, and now you're passionate about reiterating the importance of the power of the human mind over our physical body, which in essence houses our experiences, it houses our feels, our emotions, our beliefs, and then how they in turn impact, immobilize, propel, whatever it might look like, us from moving forward in life. How have you relayed the depth of your understanding to people who you know wouldn't really associate the two for whatever reason?
Oh, that's a great question, actually. It's been a stage of evolution, really, is the truth. Because when I came out of hospital, I actually was under this illusion, you know, when I can walk again, I can rebuild my life, everything's going to be okay. And the truth was, when I got out of hospital, that was actually probably the more difficult period. Because when I was in hospital, I was kind of taken like this big hand out the sky, just took me out of life, put me in hospital. And although it was a very horrible and traumatic journey in many ways, it was a blessing in disguise, because I didn't have life distracting me and taking me out.
Yeah.
So when I got back home, I was under this illusion, you know, it would be okay, I'd be comforting, I'd be able to rebuild my life. But actually, what happened is I realized that I'd lost my identity, who I was. I was no longer the car mechanic. I no longer had an income. I was no longer a boyfriend. I was no longer a best friend. I was no longer the football player. And all of these identities I lost. And that was so difficult, because I just didn't get it at the time. And so for, you know, a number of years, really, I just kind of hid away, and I just didn't do a lot. I mean, I did a lot of work on myself to overcome the depression and the emotional traumas I was having. And I got to a point where I wouldn't say properly happy, but I was okay. But it wasn't until really 2018 that I went to this personal development event, which I didn't realize was a personal development event until I got there. My first ever event. I thought it was something completely different, but that's another story. But when I got there, I was asked to share on stage as a participant my story, and I never knew that was coming. And I was up there and I was sweating, I was shaking, I didn't want to be there, and I shared. And then that's when the room, you know, erupted and everyone clapped, and I realized, you know what, I got a moral obligation here to use this and do something and share it. And that was in my heart of hearts when I knew that was the moment that started to really change my course and my direction of life. And since then, I decided to start to work with people. I said, right, step one, just work with people, experiment. So I reached out to some people and said, look, hey, I know that the power of the mind is powerful. I'll be honest, I don't quite know how it works. Would you work with me? Would you try some visualizations with me? Would you try some meditative techniques? And could you fancy just playing with it? So I started to work with people. And what I realized is we had some moments of significance. You know, we were able to harness that intention, that focus force, that energy. We were able to harness it and have moments where, you know, physical symptoms would just dissipate and fall away in minutes. So I started to realize that the mind-body connection was significant, and we can influence the physiology in the body. But then I realized there was some blockages. So I started to, you know, one example, actually, I worked with a lady who had MS. And we were able to, in the meditations and the visualizations, we were able to get her strength in her hands to come back. We were able to get her vision to become more clear. We were able to get the lost sensation in her leg to come back, you know, in minutes. I'm talking like 6, 7, 8 minutes. But then all the physical symptoms would just come back. It was like they would evaporate, and then they would just fall back from the sky and rain all over her again. And it was like, we know it's possible. And then what I realized, we started to explore why. And then what I realized is that she was experiencing these moments of elevation, like love and joy and gratitude. And, you know, she was having these experiences that were leading to changing the body. But then she was going back into her life where she was carrying a lot of anger and resentment. she'd been treated quite badly by some family members, and there's been some things happen where she was carrying this. So the question was, it was like, well, if we can create that physical change in those small windows, well, can we expand that? You know, can we take that elevated state of being from the visualization, and can we take it into life? Can we, you know, make it more of a permanent state of being? And of course, the answer was yes. It took a little while to work it all out. So we started to do the coaching work to do that, and that's when we realized, or I had a big realization with her. You know, the key here is really about, you know, bridging the gap between knowing, doing, and being. Knowing is adopting the philosophy. Knowing is learning new information. It's hearing someone speak. It's reading the book. It's going to the seminar or whatever it is. But then there's the doing, right? So people will take this information and they'll be inspired, and then they'll start to meditate or make lifestyle changes, or, you know, do whatever we do. And that's wonderful. But there's a piece missing, because our state of being, you know, is 24 hours a day, even when we're sleeping. So you meditate for an hour a day. Well, that's great. It's a wonderful start, but it might change your state of being for 1 hour, but there's another 23 hours. So we started to work on how to bridge the gap between the doing and the being. And then the being part led me on a bit of a spiritual journey. I started to explore that. And that's when I started to get really deep and started to go into more spiritual work and more soul work, and get really deep on the energy work. And I've realized, you know, when you incorporate the mind, the body, and you could say the physiology or the emotional self, whichever viewpoint you want to look at it from, and you incorporate you, and by you, I'm referring to you as the spiritual being, the life force, the energizer, the essence. And when you incorporate all of those and you ascend your state of being, magic just happens. And that's, so it's been like a stage and a journey of evolution to kind of get clear on it all. I hope that answers the question.
No, you did a phenomenal job there. I'm just getting lost here listening to you as well. It's beautiful to hear your perspective. One of the things I just like to touch back on, which ties into what you've just explained or talked about there, is when we place ourselves in everyday life, which you described, you left the environment of the hospital where you'd no distractions, your focus was very self-healing orientated. It was on your body, it was on this recovery. You step back into the home environment, the environment around you, and life happens. Basically, we have our interactions with other people, and all of a sudden we're pulled out of this heart-based place and back into our heads, and then the environments around us impact us. Similarly, when you're speaking about that lady and what she experienced, how she had limited times with peak experiences that then dissipated, you know, life or thoughts or beliefs, feelings, whatever it might be, re-engage, and then she's back to square one. That's a huge thing, I think, that a lot of people battle with in everyday life, where they know they feel it, they feel the discord in their lives, they know that they want things to be different, they don't know where to begin, or if they do begin and they're trying to stay in their own lane, do the best that they can from their vantage point, and then the outside world, just like you said, rains down in whatever way, shape or form that looks like, and all of a sudden you can feel like you're back to square one again. What would you say to anybody who you know is in that space, knows that they want that change, but can't seem to, for whatever reason, keep the momentum going of that action place? Because a lot of people, I'm just going to call a spade, our minds can be they can be assholes, right? And the amount of, again, excuse my language, fuckery that the mind can just come in and tell you you're not worth shit, what you're doing, you know, isn't good enough, who do you think you are? In your case, I mean, exceptional, you will never walk again, and you're deluding yourself, are you kidding yourself? And here you are, you know, quite literally walking to talk, and it's amazing. But for some, you know, for some people who really they just can't they defeat themselves with their own minds. They're, you know, because that's what happens. There's nobody else doing this. It's ourselves, but we don't realize that we are, like you said, you know, God in skin, having these experiences. We forget that. We forget that we're made of star stuff. You know, what would you say to somebody who battles with that?
What I would say is this is the key to that is awareness, it's presence. And let me expand on that, because that sounds like a very obvious thing to say. They're words that get thrown out a lot at the moment, and it's important to really go a layer deeper on that, because we have our mind, right? And what happens is we have presence. So if we break this down for a moment, you have your body, which is that physical vessel. You have your mind, which is a protection mechanism, and it's a planning machine. Then you have your emotional self, and you also have you as the spiritual being you are. Now, what I've found with many people, and one of the first things I'll do when I work with someone, is we will go through a process called what I call is clean slating, and what that means is we find out the full definition of what you means, and we'll find out the full definition of what presence means. And then we'll go through a process to clean slate. And what that means is find out any precepts that a person has. Now, what a precept is it's an underlying rule or principle. And a principle is basically an underruling truth that someone has. So a precept is an underlying rule or a principle that stimulates conduct or behavior. And most people don't realize what precepts are. And they're effectively like the roots of a belief system. Now, the problem is we can learn these things conceptually about presence, about being a spiritual being, about the mind being a separate entity to the body, all of these stuff, right? We can learn that from a conceptual and intellectual standpoint. But if we have precepts and we have beliefs that don't coincide that through because that's what we've adopted through our experience of life, all of these things is just simply layering on top of those. So it might give you a moment of presence, or it might give you a moment of awareness, or it might give you a moment of self-awareness, but it's not going to be permanent. But the moment you go in and deconstruct that, what you're really doing is you're pulling away any of the barriers. And then what happens is you become more present. Now, when you become more present, what happens? Because presence is a spiritual ability, right? Presence is the awareness. It is that spiritual being you are. And when you become more present, your awareness grows. So you as a being expand. And when you expand, what happens? Well, you become big. You feel big. Well, when you feel big, when you become big, guess what? The mind becomes smaller. So all of a sudden, you become bigger than it. Now, I know from my own experience of life, the moments when I'm stressed, when I get stressed, I do this work, and I really hold on to my value of integrity, but I'm human. We all get stressed. And I know that the moments when I'm stressed is because I'm not present, I'm absent. And when I'm absent, I become smaller than my mind. When I'm present, I expand and I become bigger than my mind. And that's the same for our problems in life. We only face adversity when our problems become bigger than us, and we have to become bigger than them. And to be honest, that's what shock does to us, right? When we have shock or trauma, the shock in the body absorbs our attention, which means we go in, which means we become small. When we become small, problems seem big. So in answer to your question, what I would say is get someone and get a good coach, get someone that knows what they're doing to help you just to expand that. And you can do it pretty rapidly, because when you expand your presence, the mind, it's almost like this. I find my mind sometimes it can be overwhelming and it can really pull me down. There's other times I look at it and I can see it throwing a tantrum, and I can just observe it and be okay with it. I hope that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. It was a beautiful analogy, and I love the way you described it. I wanted to ask you about, you put up a post the other day and you talked about the power of locked up and agitated energy in your body. I was wondering if you'd expand on that for anybody, because I think there's a lot of people in that state lately, and they don't really know what to do with that either. It's very evident in you know, the stresses people are experiencing and going through, you know, the detriment of containing that agitated energy, and not diffusing it to hold on to it and then act out via it. If you could talk to that.
Yeah, I'm assuming you're referring to the post I did about mass.
Yeah.
Mass. Oh, you put me on the spot. Can I remember the definition? The definition of mass is a unified body of matter with no specific shape, locked up agitated energy caused by the collision of two energy flows, suspended in space around the spiritual being. So that's the definition. Now, if you break that down, well, what does that really mean? Well, a unified body of matter, well, we know matter is physical form with no specific shape. Well, that's obvious, right? It can be any shape. But this is the part I love. And it says locked up agitated energy. Well, what is energy? I mean, there are lots of different definitions for energy, right? And one of the definitions for energy, I mean, emotion is energy in motion, right? Emotion, I think the word emotion was derived from the Latin word emotere, which meant energy in motion. Now, if you break that down, well, what is the colliding of two energy flows? Well, thought is an energy flow. It's a neurological pathway. It's also an electromagnetic field. You have emotions running through the body. Now, if you have a collision, which can be a paradigm crash, it can be two thoughts colliding. If you have two emotions that collide and they're either unknowing because we ignore the unpleasant sensation in the body, or we're just not willing to feel it because it feels freaking horrible and scary, what happens? Then we get this mass form, we get this agitated, locked up energy that holds in the body. And you can identify it through unpleasant sensations, basically. And what happens is that mass becomes heavy. You know, and again, one of the processes I run with my clients is what I call a mass handling, where we just go to it, we basically experience it, because we have to, if we want to release an emotion, that's not something we can do in the mind, you know, and understanding and forgiveness in the mind. You know, I know a lot of people say the key is forgiveness, and, you know, absolutely. But you cannot fully release locked up agitated energy and emotions just through a psychological process. It has to be felt and experienced. So we have to place our attention on the mass, the locked up agitated energy, enough for it to release. And for anyone watching, you can practice this. If you feel an unpleasant sensation in your body, wherever it is, okay, and you place your attention on it for long enough, you will find it starts to dissipate, and you will find that the biological process, it will actually start to surface and release. A great way to do this is if you're feeling heavy, or if you're feeling stuck, or, you know, like you can't get past something in your life, take 10 minutes in the morning, sit in silence, place your attention into your stomach, and just feel the unpleasant sensation. And it will feel pretty horrible, but it's only an emotion, you know, it's not going to kill you. Well, it might do if you leave it in there. I'm joking, but I'm half not. But seriously, if you place your attention on it, you'll notice it begins to actually arise in your body, and you might shed a tear, or you might have something, you know, surface. That is true release. You know, that's that mass, that's that locked up agitated energy I was referring to, you know, and that's what we got to get out. That's cleansing, that's healing. That's where real physical healing happens, actually.
Yeah, and it's given your human body permission to do it intuitively. It knows what to do. It's not designed to contain and retain all of this bullshit. It's not. It's designed to release it, to let go, and the body wants to let go. It's the mind that says no and tries to, you know, to keep it in. Again, you touched on another topic there with regards to the forgiveness and the experience of releasing something in the body. It's so true. And a lot of people think that they are processes through the mind, and you're never going to get there. Never going to get there. I, as recent as yesterday, experienced this. I held on to a story, so attached to a story based on an experience, based on what you talked about earlier on, this core underlying wound or belief that literally, like the roots of a tree, anchor so many things that you've experienced. because of that, I have this experience. I hold on to it. I think I've forgiven. I think I've let go. I think I have. My body says no, not a hope. And then I got to this place yesterday, and I swear to God, like I'm still in awe of what's unfolding around me. Compassion and unconditional love. And they're there on my arms. You can see them tattooed to remind me. I've got the Mani Padme home there and the Unalome here. They're there to remind me compassion, the journey of unconditional. And yesterday, I got to actually feel it, and the release. It's indescribable. Like I don't even have words. I'm not even going to keep trying to talk about it. All I can say is it wasn't experienced here. It was very much experienced here, and the freedom that we gift ourselves in really releasing these pent up things that we really don't need, because you spoke to it there as well. You came in from another angle, which is extremely important. When we do not address our body, when it whispers to us, it shouts. And when we do not address the shouts, we hear the screams. And when we try to ignore the screams, there's an all-out shit show. And then all of a sudden you're dealing with major illness, or like you said, the accident is another avenue that this actually appears. But so many people are in a state of dis-ease. It manifests as disease in our bodies, and then it's another game altogether. If you could even touch on the importance of that, because I know you come across it immensely. It's a huge part of what you do. You help them to understand the locked in trauma in their body, and then what to do with that when it impacts physically, and then what to do from there.
I mean, in terms of how it impacts the body physically, I think we have to. The only way that I've been able to understand this myself, if you like, and kind of get my head around it, and I've studied a lot of Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. He's been a massive influence on helping me understand that, and Bruce Lipton, and some of the others. And you have to break it down on a cellular level. If you look at the body as an organism, right? It's one whole organism. But really, it's not. It's a community of organisms. Because if we break the body down into systems of the body, then you have your endocrine system, digestive system, nervous system, etc., etc. And then you break those down into organs, and you have pieces of the systems and the parts of the body, right? And when you break those down, and you have tissues, and then you break the tissues down, and you have cells. Well, if you look at a cell, what is a cell? Well, it has components, and it has mechanical parts. But if you break that down, and if you put that under a powerful microscope, it's energy. Yeah. On a subatomic level, it's energy. It's electrons, atoms, and molecules, and that's what we're made of. And the cells, and this is one thing that I learned that really changed the way that I work with myself and with people, is that cells do this thing where they have energy passing through them, right? They have processes that to function, and there's a new science, epigenetics, that people are talking about now, about how our emotions and the environment in the body affects the gene expression of the body. And the cells have a process. Now, what they do is they basically, they have to keep dividing and all of these things to reproduce and maintain the body. But one thing they do is really well is they eliminate toxins. So they'll draw in water, and they eliminate toxins out, and they push it out into the bloodstream. Then the body has the toxins in the blood, and the body has its own paths of elimination. It has 4, in fact. It has respiratory through the lungs and out through our breathing. It has perspiration through the skin, urination through the kidneys and the bladder, and then excretion through the digestive system, right? But so that's basically, all illness and disease. In fact, I did a live video on this today. All illness and disease is basically created when the inflow of toxins is greater than the outflow of toxins in the body. So, when we look at toxins, there is environmental toxins, there's processed foods with toxins in, there's, viruses and those type of toxins and that type of stuff. But most of all, toxic emotions. You know, and things like anger and guilt and shame and blame, they're okay to feel. Please don't misunderstand me. It's okay to feel that way. But if we feel like that for prolonged periods of time over and over and over again, it can become toxic to our body. And then what happens? The inflow becomes greater than the cells and the body's ability to eliminate and out. And that's when all of a sudden the body gets knocked out of balance. And there are simple ways that you can actually support the cells to rejuvenate and to heal. I mean, first you've got to turn the tap off to the toxicity, of course. And most of the time, I say most, and I mean most, but not all, but most of the time, that is to do with emotional patterns that we are stuck in. We're stuck inside of, you know, toxic emotions. You turn the tap off and then you work out simple ways to support the cells. You can do breathing exercises. Meditation processes are incredible. So, you know, once you understand that principle, all of a sudden you can say, well, hang on a minute. You've just got to allow the flow of energy through the body, you know, and you can look at that from a cellular level. You can look at it as an energetic level, a soul level. You can look at it from more of a biological level. But either way, what we're really saying is we need flow of energy through the body. And that has to come, you know, you'll experience it, right? You're really upset, you're angry, or you're really sad or something. And you give your friend a big cuddle and all of a sudden the floodgates open. How do you feel after? You feel light. Why do you feel light? That locked up, agitated energy has been released, biological process of release. And then all of a sudden the energy flows restored around the body. And that's ultimately what healing's about. You know, Joe Dispenza says that energy is information. And he's right, because the energy is the information. It's like the order form or the direction form that you put into the cells, and the cells then communicate and they react and do their thing based on the energy and information they're given. So it makes sense then, right? We'll give them the right information.
And then up to the person, you know, to honor the body as the receptor of this information, and actively then to do something with it, because it is a personal choice whether or not, like, I mean, you've got all avenues communicating with you, looking for your attention to do something with it, and then it is up to us to make the change, to be the change, and to do you know, the steps, like you said earlier on. It's not enough to know the information. You have to do something with it, and then the embodiment of it, so that you can actually, you know, be the change that you want to see in your world moving forward. Joe Dispenza is a phenomenal man. I shared this with you. I got to spend 2.5 days in Edinburgh at a seminar. Great intentions to do one of the week-long retreats, and then the world went on snooze. They hit the snooze button, didn't they? So it is definitely something that I would love to experience, because I love the way he very simply explains, you know, about how, like, that if our environment is bigger than us, that it's very difficult without that awareness to bring about any type of change in the world at all. So yeah, I love that we had that in common when we spoke. Aaron, I really just want to say thank you so much for coming in here and sharing this wealth of knowledge. It's been absolutely epic to listen to. You're an incredibly awesome man. Can you share where people can find you?
Yeah, firstly, I want to say thank you so much for having me. And I've kind of been flicking and seeing lots of comments, and I can see there's clearly some amazing people here. So thank you for having me here. Having me.
This is what Aaron is the new Joe Dispenza. He's our UK version.
If I had £1 for every time someone has said that, that's the biggest compliment I could ever take.
I love it, but you know, you're literally living. You are the living embodiment of what he goes up on a stage and he talks about is possible. You are like it in skin, and you know, if these guys, you know, really should find you and share this story with the world, because it's exceptional. I know his meditations are so powerful. The descriptions of what you're after sharing, you know, how you've personally utilized them. That information is for everybody, and everybody can really transform their lives with it, you know. So I really love that you've shared, you know, that you're taking your story and showing people what is possible, because it's really needed in the world right now. So on behalf of the world, thank you for doing what you're doing.
You're welcome.
Can't be easy.
You're welcome. Yeah. You know, if people want to check me out, I've got a website. It's aarontimsofficial.com, or Facebook. I've got a Facebook page called Conscious Success. You know, I'm now in the process of, because I just believe so much in human potential, and I believe that, you know, we together we have so much more potential. You know, so one of the missions my wife and I are on now is to bring people together, and we've started Conscious Success, which we're going to grow into a training and coaching academy for mind body healing, and that's what we want to do. You know, we want to bring people together, we want to do events, and you know, because when people come together, that human potential just expands. You know, and what I said earlier, you know, when you get present and your beingness expands. Well, if your beingness expands and my beingness expands and another person's beingness expands and we all expand together, I mean, just imagine what that can create.
Yeah, I love it. I love the idea. Even talking about it and listening to it, you can feel it. You can feel it. It is contagious. That sounds epic. Well, listen, thank you again, and thanks to everybody watching, and for all the engagement with the comments. We really appreciate them. We'll take a peek back when we're done. Until next time, thank you so much, and thanks for everyone watching. Bye bye.